Hi everyone, my name is Timothy Mitchell and I'm with Mimaki USA. Mimaki has a very cool new product and it's called TRAPIS. Now TRAPIS is like a system. It is a system that uses a very special printer with a very unique ink, a unique transfer paper, and then to a unique press to create a remarkable finished product, which is the ability to print not just on natural fibers, but all kinds of different fabrics. I mean, you really run the entire gamut here. And I figured what better way to explain this idea than to invite somebody here who does it every day for a living, and frankly, has been doing it for a long time in his family. So this is my friend Jon Gintzer from LA Print Labs. Jon, thank you very much for joining me.
Well,
it's a real pleasure, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. You have a great story. You know, you're like, what, a fourth generation in the printing business?
yes, from going back to letterpress through lithography, screen printing, and now textile printing.
It's fantastic. So you're obviously, as the name implies, you work and operate out of Los Angeles.
Yes.
And you own a TRAPIS process.
Here.
You know, you have the printer, the inks, the paper, and the cleaver ink transfer press. What brought you, or what attracted you to TRAPIS as a solution to what you do?
Well, when we did mostly sublimation previously, which works only on polyester, and we had a direct pigment that only worked for cotton. We wanted to be able to do all the other different types of fabrics. That's what our customers wanted. And previous to TRAPIS, you need a different, complicated, multi-step setup for each type of fabric. One for nylon, one for rayon, and it was slow and expensive, labor intensive, water intensive. So none of those really worked out until with TRAPIS, it gets rid of a lot of the steps of pre-treatment, of post-treatment.
Right.
And it works on a very wide range of materials, all in the one system.
Cool. It seems to me, initially I looked at TRAPIS as primarily being more of a decor proposition. And then speaking with you at length, it seems like you've taken decor and gone in every other direction. Like you're doing custom fashion, you're doing visual, you're doing decor, obviously. Give me some examples, because I know you were saying you were doing nylons, you were doing specialty fabrics, you're doing people making custom prototype clothing.
Yes. I mean, we get it. I had a lot of customers that did swimwear.
Yeah.
And nylon is what they really wanted. And they were settling for polyester, or they were getting nylon from overseas.
Sure.
So the TRAPIS does work, works on nylon, and the color, and it has the color range of a wet print or direct print, and the light fastness. And so we're able to provide that with a fast turnaround and low minimums, which is what our local customers need.
Would you say that one of the big advantages of this approach is your turnaround times are quick, or certainly quicker than ordering overseas and waiting potentially months and still have an uncertainty? It has to go through a lot of steps to arrive at the port of Los Angeles and then eventually go to the customer. And then also you can do a lot of different custom things that the customer brings you.
Yeah, so the turnaround time is key. And the minimum amounts are key. A lot of my customers are, they're being very responsive to trends.
Sure.
So, some people, they want to take something from concept to market in 30 days, 45 days, and you're not going to be able to do that by getting something printed overseas. Even with shipping, even by air, which the expense of that is big.
It's prohibitive.
Well, and then you start talking about, the carbon footprint of it and all that. And, especially, again, like with swim, it's not big yardage per piece.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Swimsuits. So, again, it works for that, where some, if it's a couple hundred yards per color, per print, then, that's it, but it still makes sense. And with TRAPIS, it makes sense.
Okay. So definitely a big advantage for short turnaround times. Definitely a big advantage for short runs, being able to do short custom run. How do you like the color?
It's great. I mean, because it's not, it's an 8-color system. It's CMYK. It's regular 4-color process plus additional colors to give you a better range. And it's been the color profile of the printer has really been optimized to get all of the ink onto the fabric. So I know, like with my previous, more traditional direct pigment printer, a lot of the ink would end up in the waste trough of the printer. So it's there, you're not seeing it on the fabric. So when you look at the transfer on the TRAPIS, there's no ink left on the paper. So it's all on the fabric. And so all of that ink getting on there, plus the extra color range provided by the extra colors, it's as good as direct or wet.
Fantastic. So your quality is there. That would always be something where somebody introduces a new product and says, "Hey, I can do short turnarounds. Hey, I can do small orders." But unfortunately, you're going to have to accept the lower quality. In our case, we're potentially even improving the quality while doing short turnarounds and being able to do quick orders and short runs.
Yeah, and additionally, the sharpness of the image, because with TRAPIS, the all the ink is on the paper and it's transferred at a high direct pressure.
Right.
Versus the more traditional direct method where the head height might be lifted off of the fabric. So you're not going to get sharp detail. So it's not only the color, but it's an additional level of detail that you sometimes can't get with previous direct.
One of the things I've experienced with direct printing is, number one, I always feel like I'm very limited by the number of fabrics that will work in the direct printing environment, because in a direct print, the printer does all the magic and prints to the fabric. And if the fabric isn't prepared properly for a direct print, and a lot of times it's not, I have to take the customer's fabric, re-roll it onto a 3-inch board properly so that I have any hope of running it through the printer. With the TRAPIS system, I'm printing to the easiest thing on earth.
Yeah.
Transfer paper.
Yeah.
I have one profile. I load it in, it prints it perfect, and now I let the calendared press do the heavy lifting, which is where I want to have difficult fabric handled in the press, not on the printer. Do you find that to be true? As far
so previously, we'd have to, at a minimum, re-roll the rolls to get them on a good core to feed it. And sometimes you didn't have the fabric trimmed, because you can't feed.
Yeah, it says raw salvage edge everywhere.
So you don't have that problem with the TRAPIS, because you can the fabric will fit on the spindle and then go through the press.
Right. So you're just printing the paper. I'm assuming too, paper. When I would use fabric, I would frequently have quite a bit of waste on the front end, just because I have to web it up to the take-up reel.
Yeah.
So I'm probably eating 6 feet in many cases, and then I have to babysit the thing all day.
Yes.
I'm paranoid. Yes. Like, that thing is going to catch the edge, and I'm going to come over here after lunch, and I have trash. I have a whole roll of trash.
Yeah.
I got to start over. But with paper, I can just print it from the front.
Yeah.
There's no waste, and then just roll that right through the either the Monty or the Cleaverick, and I'm good to go.
Yeah. With direct, it doesn't even matter, digital direct and even wet print, you're inevitably going to have wasted fabric, because if any color goes out or there's a clogged head or anything like that, you will have wasted fabric, and that's something that customers don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that there's a working wastage of 5%, especially if it's an expensive fabric or hard to get. There's really no way to avoid that, even with extreme babysitting. So with TRAPIS, once the paper is good and then it's feeding, you're fine.
Right. Yeah, I had encountered 2 instances where I had a customer that had a very small amount of a very hard to get fabric. And they said, "Look, I need this transferred, and I can't have anything go wrong because I can't replace it. I can. It's going to take me a year to get it again. And so I know with the TRAPIS system, I would have a much higher degree of confidence that I can waste very, very little of it, put it through there, it's going to look great, and not have it go wrong in some way.
Yeah. And Penn, to your previous point on direct systems, you need to feed some at the beginning and the end.
Right.
So in a situation like that, someone comes to you with 10 yards and say, well, I need 2 yards at the beginning and 2 yards at the end.
I've just eaten 40% of your roll here just to web it up.
Yeah.
Another thing, I think one of the things I really appreciate printing to paper is I just find that once I have all the color dialed in properly on this specialty paper, I don't have to keep changing everything around for different fabrics, as some people will try to do, chasing their tail with all of these different white points and types of fabric that you have ends up like 20, 30 profiles. With this, there's just the paper. I'm just printing to the paper. It's always easy. I'm printing to the paper. And paper is very forgiving on the printer.
Yeah.
I don't have all these fibers and everything going up into the printer and clogging my nozzles and all of that challenges. It's paper.
Yeah.
It's stable. It doesn't cause issues. It's easy to run. And it just seems to make the process, just the ease of use, so much better than trying to print direct.
Yeah. And also for someone going from traditional sublimation, where they're printing on paper and then transferring in a heat press, this isn't that dissimilar. This isn't that much different from that. It's not the same. It's you're not going to face the same difficulties going from paper sublimation to direct.
Sure.
Where things like that, where you have to really watch the clogged heads, and it's a different head height for each fabric.
Oh, yeah.
All those sorts of
I got these raw edges. I got to bring my head height way up. So I hope that edge doesn't get just a little higher. I'm going to have a problem.
Yeah. So in the terms of going from someone who's been doing sublimation to go to this, there's a lot more similarities in TRAPIS than there is to going to a direct system.
I find printing to transfer paper one of the easiest things to do.
Yep.
It's a water-based ink. It's very forgiving. The rolls on there, I just walk up to it and send prints and do a transfer. And if you have a nice transfer press, which in the case of TRAPIS, there's two partners, Cleaverick and Monte Antonio. In my opinion, those are your two top-tier presses in the world. They're excellent. So that end of it is reassuring that you have a press that does exactly what it's supposed to do well and handles all the oddball fabrics better than any of the alternatives.
Yeah. Another advantage to doing it on paper is if you were doing traditional direct and on Tuesday, you wanted to do this fabric A, fabric B, fabric C. Each time you're loading that roll of fabric onto the printer.
Yes.
And doing it. With the TRAPIS, you can have a roll of paper that has fabric A immediately followed by fabric B, followed by fabric C. So that once the paper is printed, you're loading it onto the transfer machine. You're doing the first fabric, you're doing the second fabric, you're doing the third fabric without a break in production.
So your ability to run a whole bunch of different jobs, it's all going to the same fabric. You're loading the paper, you're loading to the same transfer paper. You just have the paper on.
Right. So it's kind of, speeds up the production time, the setup time for each of those different fabrics.
Okay. You mentioned speed, and that's something obviously production matters. One of the things I have noticed is the production speed using a transfer TRAPIS system versus a direct print system. Even with Mimaki's own printers, the TRAPIS system is faster.
It is. Depending on which system you're comparing it to, it is faster.
Okay. I think we're about double.
Yes, yeah.
I think you were giving me some square footage earlier, one and the other, and I went, that almost looks like double.
Yeah. From my current system, it's more like triple, but the one I have now is very slow. But yeah, it's faster than a lot of direct.
Okay. All right. So I think some of the key advantages, and one of the ones I think about all the time is, I could go down to a fabric store, Joann Fabrics or Michael's, and find fabric. And theoretically, there's a good chance this would be able to actually transfer it. I'm not saying everything works, but it seems like TRAPIS has a higher percentage of working with the broadest number of things you could throw at it versus any of the alternatives on the market.
For when the testing we did, there wasn't anything that it didn't go on. Again, I don't want to make it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find some outlier that doesn't work well.
There's something, but again, for the range, and that's also for in my business. I'm not stocking fabrics,
right?
And telling the customers, these are the 2 nylons I have. These are the 2 cottons I have. This is the 2 wools I have. My customers bring me their fabric. I know a lot of the suppliers in town. I know where to get different things if they don't know where to get it. And so then that's that. The ability of TRAPIS to work on such a wide variety of fabrics and different blends and different thicknesses really enables that to happen and to give those customers, what they want on their fabric.
Yeah, I think to me that just phenomenal versatility that the customer now is in the driver's seat. They can choose. They can come to you. Chances are it's likely to work. You could always have an outlier that doesn't quite meet their expectations, but you don't have to spend a lot of time or energy to find out, because you can run a very short run and show it to them and say, hey, what do you think? We haven't done this one before. Or maybe there's just some adjustments in some temperature settings or some dwell time. But it would seem to me that you no longer have stock. You don't have to have all of these remnants and, 60 yards left from an 80-yard roll that you're paying to store. And then you got to keep track of them all and label them all. And or if you don't know what they are, what they were for. It's all gone.
Yeah.
It's just on demand and customer demand.
Yeah.
That's a very different business model. I think it's revolutionary in a way.
And to your statement of sampling it or testing it, in a previous model, say for nylon or rayon, even just for a sample for a customer fabric, you would have to coat it, let the coating dry,
right? Test
print it, do the steaming, and then you're done. Just to see, just for a sample. And with the TRAPIS, because the coating step is eliminated by the paper.
Correct.
You can just run a test, and if you need to adjust it, you can do the adjustment.
So I'm going to make a little sidebar on the coating.
Yeah.
So when you say coating, my recollection is, if you have fabric that has to be specially treated or coated in order to be direct receptive, you either have to buy it that way. Now you have a very limited selection, or you have to do it yourself, or you have to send it somewhere. Most people don't. I remember an experiment where I tried to do it myself, and I gave up on that. That was a lot of chemicals, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and I clearly had no idea what I was doing. So I sent it out. And then that would be like, I got to pay for shipping. I got to wait a week. I got a week coming back. And then I have the cost of doing it. And then they might say, look, it's 3 weeks. So I'm like, it's a month and a half just to get it ready. And then the cost of all that. And you've eliminated all that completely.
And on top of that, the wet chemicals for the coating have a shelf life. Also. So you have to keep track of when you mixed it, how long it's been, how long it's been out. So there's a waste there, unless you're,
okay,
coating.
So your 100-yard roll that you coated, that you used 50 of, that sat for a year, might not print very well later.
But also the liquid coating.
Oh, like sitting on the shelf.
I call it sitting on the shelf. That also that also has due date. I don't know if I've ever used.
I assume there's also a hardware investment in all this too.
Yeah, so you need a coating machine, which again, so that's when you're comparing the speed of the TRAPIS versus versus the previous direct methods. It's not just that's part of the time consideration. That the fabric also the treatment process is time consuming. It does not move fast. It does not move fast. So there it eliminates that. And it also eliminates it's actually the wet chemicals and there's waste and goes down the drain or wherever depending on.
Let's hope it's not. Yeah, we know. There's the ideal world of responsible people, and then there's the less than ideal world in large parts of the world that have terrible problems with pollution from this stuff.
But again, so with TRAPIS, with the coating being on the cold and hove paper, you're only using what you need when you need it. So that then there's not that waste.
There's also, as I understand it, a very significant environmental advantage to doing it this way versus doing it these other ways.
Well, yeah. So for previous direct methods, besides the pre-treatment and then the direct printing, which, as I said before, sometimes not even all the ink goes on the fabric.
Right.
So it's a big waste. And then you have to steam it afterwards, which is a big water use, a big power use. And then if add in some drying after that.
And you have to reclaim all of that fluvia, all that waste has to be reclaimed and disposed of properly.
Correct. Or, recycled or some kind of water filtration system. And then even after that, if there's a drying process or if you have to reframe the fabric, like there's so many additional steps after that. So
what this reminds me a little bit of is, back in the day I was into the screen printing business, for screen printing. And what happened is UV and other ink technologies and digital printing just sort of said, you don't have to do hundreds of these and stock them on shelves. You can just do these by order and do them all quickly. And it sounds like digital technology has kind of stepped into older technologies and said, on demand, no waste, easy to use, no stock, short turnaround times, and we can probably bring a lot of the manufacturing back here and just do it in the United States.
There are some comparisons to be made to the direct to film process that's going on that is replacing huge amounts of screen printing. For people because you're only doing exactly the number you want. It actually has much wider color range than if you were doing a traditional screen print. Sure. It's not for one screen per color, it's digital.
Yeah, no coincidence, Mimaki's in that business too.
Yeah, it is. So it's and that's also a technology that is so much more advanced today than it was 5 years ago, which is the same thing going on with TRAPIS as it develops. It's gonna replace huge parts of any of the previous direct systems.
Well, I think you have a fantastic business model. I wish you all the success in the world. I know you're going to have a lot of success, and hopefully this testimonial, this video, gets the word out with people because, if you need custom, I have a big event coming up at the end of the month, right? And I'd love to do some custom things, and I like natural fibers. I prefer natural fibers for tapestries, displays, a lot of things. I just think it's a nicer look. It's a better hand. It's a preference. And I'd love to have natural fiber tablecloths for the event, all kind of custom done with certain decals for the event. And, you're the person to turn to. Well, yeah. They say, hey, I need this done. And here's a fabric that I picked out and, send it to you guys and have it taken care of.
Well, because the other thing too is you can have, you can match it across multiple fabrics for the same thing. So if you need a tablecloth that you want to be something that's more, a woven, that's gonna work for that and table backs. And then you want some curtains that have some drape to it. It's a different fabric.
So I'm using 6 or 7 different types of fabrics, all with the same custom design. And you're like, hey, I just put them on one roll of paper, do them all, and we just load the different fabrics into the cleaver rack.
Yep.
How clever. Wow, I didn't even sort of think of that because that's a real opportunity there. So John, when we spoke a little bit earlier, you mentioned that when you were on your journey to find a direct printing solution, you did find a direct printing solution initially, except the direct printing solution that you communicated to me was a little pricey.
Yeah, it was about 15 times the complete TRAPIS system.
Okay.
And it had some of the existing drawbacks of other. It did print a variety of fabrics.
Okay, so you get your variety.
We get the variety, but it shared some of the drawbacks of other current direct systems.
Sure.
Where because the ink isn't going to paper and transferring, the print heads are exposed to the fibers of the fabric, which can shorten the lifespan of the print heads, but it can also clog the print heads mid-print and start getting misprints. And when you're doing direct printing to fabric, when you can start getting some lines and some dropouts, and you ruin the fabric.
Right. You're ultimately dependent upon the vagaries of the fabric.
Yeah.
And in the natural fabric universe versus, say, a controlled polyester workflow, there are even more vagaries.
Yes. And it also things like adjusting the head height for different fabrics, having to need the fabrics to be, perfectly on a roll and with very clean selvages.
Yeah.
That's also an issue with that. With it's even some of the more direct systems that have can print on a wider variety of fabrics. There's still some of the drawbacks, and one of the main ones being price. Especially if you're trying, where I'm not servicing one big customer that's going to keep a machine like that busy. I'm serving a lot of different customers with a wide range of needs.
And most of whom are bringing their own fabric.
Correct.
Not, here's my set series of fabrics that run well through my very expensive direct.
Right, or I know how these ones run.
And then considering the cost of that, you don't want to goof it up. So you're probably you're more risk averse to like trying something because you can get punished.
Yeah.
Just, hey, that fabric didn't work and now my printer is down for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the solution that we're offering with TRAPIS is also very cost effective.
Yeah, it is. And so it's at the cost is great for entry level position, and especially the printer being really affordable,
right,
and comparable to the entry level sublimation printer. You can always add another one.
Sure.
Some of these bigger systems, if they to add another one is another huge jump up.
Yeah.
Even if you have it.
Yeah, and then where am I going to put it?
Yeah.
Now I have to buy another warehouse.
Yeah, the footprint is another consideration.
Okay. The
TRAPIS versus some of these other big direct systems.
The Mimaki runs a standard, TS330.
Yeah.
With very subtle modifications for the platen. Just putting a little more heat on the platen, and then otherwise develop a very specific set of Mimaki pigment-based stains for the broad gamut. But it's certainly not it's a very affordable printer. It's right in line with any other printers of its type. And then I agree with you. I think redundancy is overlooked and very important.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say a printer goes down. Okay, well, I have another printer and I can get the jobs out. I might have to work some overtime, but the jobs are done. My clients are happy. I haven't lost anybody.
Yeah.
You have one big expensive printer and it goes down, you're like in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the bigger printers, the print heads are more expensive.
Quite a bit.
So this is that's a little. No print heads are cheap, but
well, I can also vouch for water-based pigment is pretty forgiving.
Yeah, and I will say in my experience too with the, also being a Mimaki sublimation customer for years and years, those inks the Mimaki inks are gentler on the print heads than a lot of other inks, which lets them survive longer.
Mimaki has been doing sublimation and sublation transfer, both pigment and dye, for a long time.
Yeah.
Like we were pioneers in the field. We definitely know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're good at it. Another thing I wanted to compare a little bit, you mentioned about direct printing. I think there's, at least from what I can tell by the numbers, there's a significant ink savings doing it in a TRAPIS process to paper. I mean, you do have to put a decent amount of ink down on the paper because we're going to transfer that. But virtually all of it transfers. I mean, when you see the transfer done, there's almost nothing left on the paper. I mean, it's gone.
Right.
When you're direct printing, you're laying down quite a bit of ink through that fabric, and then it goes into, like a tron and then is collected.
Right.
So I would think your ink usage is considerably higher overall direct printing versus a TRAPIS process.
It is. It can be higher. But the additional advantage is that with the TRAPIS, all of the ink is going on the fabric. That's what's more that's what's been disappointing to me is on a direct printer, printing it, and like you said, because there's no, it's not in contact, so it lets the ink pass through the fabric, and on all the direct printers have a trough, and all the ink is going in there and it's going into a waste bucket.
Right, which then you have to professionally have disposed of and everything else. So.
But it's also about the amount of ink you're getting onto the fabric to see it, and you'll see with the TRAPIS, with the profiling that Mimaki has done, that all of the ink is going onto the fabric. And I think even with a lot of sublimation profiles, there's still ink on the paper.
Yeah.
Depending, and the TRAPIS, it's all going onto all going onto the fabric. So you're not paying for ink.
Right.
That's going.
One of the things that's great about having Colden Hove as one of our core partners, because there's three parts to this. The first is Mimaki is the ink and the printer. Colden Hove is the special treated fabric that's necessary for this process. And then you have Monte Antonio or Cleaverick make the two calendared presses that use the pressure to put it through. Colden Hove has a worldwide global reputation for making excellent transfer paper. I mean, it's the gold standard of transfer paper. Widely used everywhere. They've been doing it since, the Middle Ages, making paper, and they just make very good products that people in the industry have known. So I think they did a marvelous job. And then putting the three pieces together, Mimaki, Colden Hove, Monte Antonio, and Cleaverick, gives you, I think, a bulletproof workflow at an entry level, really in this industry, an entry level price.
Yeah.
And the calendar press is special because it has extra pressure. It's a special accessory. It's a unique press that uses more pressure to transfer the ink. Do you use it for standard sublimation also?
I don't, but you can. You can use it for
just regular dye sub.
So for someone, there is still a place for dye sublimation on polyester.
Oh, no question.
So if you were starting out and you wanted to have a press that would work for both, then you could have this one press and have a sublimation printer and have the TRAPIS printer, and you'd still be at a really low point of entry.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to emphasize that, we've been using, in our demo center, we have one calendar press, and it's the Cleaverick, and it's the one that's, certified for the TRAPIS process to put more pressure on. But then when we want to do sublimation, standard dye through our other Mimaki printers, we use the same calendar press, just different setting.
Yeah.
So it becomes a universal press to do two things.
There's nothing taken away to make the press suitable.
You don't have a set-aside press that does only one thing.
Yeah, they didn't. This is a press that was made, it could be used for sublimation, and it was additional things were added, so you could. It wasn't that it's stripped of anything.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to mention now that you brought up dye sublimation is, for me, one of the limitations, and I do a lot of dye sublimation and very involved in it. One of the limitations is its color fastness.
Right.
Versus a pigment-based system is going to have much better color fastness. So let's say we've made 2 upholstered chairs. And the 2 upholstered chairs, one was done with polyester on dye sublimation and one was done through a TRAPIS and pigment. If those chairs sit in direct sunlight, the TRAPIS is going to last a lot better for color fastness than the sublimation.
Yes, it is. The sublimation has never had great light fastness, and there's no, there's no way to improve on that.
Dye.
It's dye. So, and so pigment has a better light fastness, and then the TRAPIS has excellent light fastness.
Okay.
And so that's also, it's not only for, upholstery, but also for, swimwear and athletic wear, things like that are going to be exposed to, sunlight, heat, and everything. It will last longer.
I get the feeling there's I sometimes looking at all the things that in just the short period of time that I've been working with TRAPIS, I'm getting the drift that there's like a whole like it's the tip of the iceberg, and then there's still this whole bottom of the iceberg of things you could figure out what to do with it. That somebody's going to go, hey, I'm doing types of umbrellas, and my umbrellas look beautiful and they have excellent color fastness. And I've already seen people kind of looking in that direction and going, hey, I can do things I didn't think I'd be able to do before at all, and now I have that color fastness element that I didn't have with dye sublimation.
Then there's stuff out there that customers don't even know to ask.
Right. I get the feeling next time we talk, like in a year from now, there'll be all these new things that people have, and probably you pioneer. Washability. Obviously, anything you're printing, textile, swimwear, wearable clothing, and prototypes, customization, anything you're doing with this, you would want to have excellent washability. It looks like, from when I studied all the numbers, it's as good as anything else on the market as far as professional washability and resistance and all the testing. I mean, you know it better than I do.
It holds up as well as anything else. I mean, you can't abuse. Everything can be abused and worn out, but when you're talking about everything being relative, it's excellent.
Okay.
On that, and it's.
So does it pass most of the general certifications that the industry expects?
Yeah, it does, and I also think that, again, the process of being adhered under high pressure really helps it to stay on there for a better word, because during other direct processes there's never any pressure applied. It's only heat that's applied to secure it to the fabric. So you could have, it's not dye, it's the pigment. So when it's binding, you don't know if it's binding to fibers that are sticking up. You don't know if it's the half on, half off. But with the amount of pressure with the TRAPIS, you're going to get good contact all the way through.
Because I have a whole bunch of kitchen chairs that are timed to have new upholstered seats, and I looked at this and went, hey, let's do some really nice upholstery and let's do some custom patterns. Let's make like something very uniquely mine, and then have those done, and then look around to all the other things kind of around the house or office that you could do custom that would have all the value of a chair that you would purchase in a store. It's the same standard, same expectations.
Well, so one of the great things about the flexibility with TRAPIS on the different types of fabric that you can do, and that the profiling has been so dialed in, and that all the ink goes on the fabrics, is it's possible, and this is something that I've had to do previously, is you can print a tablecloth for someone out of a woven, and then have that match the drapes, which are something that is a different fabric. You're going to get the colors to match. You're doing it on the same process, same time. So, again, so you can match your chairs, your tablecloth, and your tie.
It's kind of cool. No, it is kind of cool. Yeah,
so,
I mean, I can do my tablecloth and my tie match.
Yeah.
Did anyone notice? There seems to be a trend. Maybe you've noticed it. I think I have. Really a trend follower. There seems to be a trend away from polyester in general toward natural fibers. In fashion, in wearables, I'm seeing people looking at they want rayon and bamboo, and they want cotton. They don't want even in underwear. I want cotton underwear. I don't want polyester underwear. Are you noticed that too?
I have. I mean, there's a big drive for natural fibers, and for cotton, and for organic fibers. And there's no such thing as organic polyester, and that's something that, again, people expect that it can be printed. They don't know the technical aspects of it.
Sure.
So they when you say you can't, there's disappointment there or whatever, and it's
my other underwear is printed.
Yeah.
Why can't you print that?
So it's another thing where you can, I can, for my customers in my area, I can provide that with lower minimums and better color and faster turnaround than than the options that are available now, which is like a lot of wet print, which might might negate some of the benefits these people think that having an organic product has. It is a trend. It's a trend in all types of fashion, and especially for kids' clothing, for bedding.
Yeah, I'm seeing pajamas, just a lot of general interest in clothing that is organic, made in cotton in particular.
And the
sublimation really can't print on it.
No, and the TRAPIS inks are Blue Sign, which if certified, which is a third party company that not only certifies the non-toxicity of the inks, but also that they're manufactured under humane conditions.
Sure.
And safe for the environment, all that sort of stuff.
So it's a reassurance to the customer that these are made properly, they're not made with like no ethical standards, and that they're safe to wear.
Right. So because if you have a customer that wants to print on certified organic cotton, they probably don't want you using harsh chemicals on it that aren't certified by someone that's safe.
Now you're undermining the whole point.
Right. You don't know if it's safe to be in contact with your skin.
Right. And in your case, everything is being done like right here in Los Angeles. Yeah. Like here's the steps.
Yeah.
It's very evident. Yeah. There's no hidden piece there.
And so California does have the highest standards in the nation as far as that stuff goes, and this obviously meets it.
Sure. So I think I think the environmental, sustainable, if you will, green messaging around TRAPIS is significant.
Yeah.
Both for its ability to print all kinds of natural fibers, to all of the certifications it meets, to the fact that it's self-contained in one spot. You really don't have the type of waste that you have associated with a lot of other large run direct wet printing. Yeah. Often that's all done offshore.
Yeah.
Someplace else with often very questionable safeguards.
Yeah. Or even the infrastructure necessary to the individual company could be great, but then the infrastructure of where that is to get rid of the waste ink doesn't even exist.
Yeah, correct. There's nothing built that would be able to reclaim it properly.
And another thing, another aspect, environmentally positive aspect of the TRAPIS is that even like with my dye sublimation paper now, I have someone who takes that and recycles it. So
really,
yeah. So this paper will be part of that also.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it either gets a second use at cutting houses as layering.
Okay.
Or some might or goes to packing, or it goes to get recycled. So
well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that's a great way to close.
Great.
I really appreciate your time here this afternoon. I've learned a great deal. I think you're a pioneer. I mean, really, you're a fourth generation printer, and now you're going like in a completely, like you're literally taking the covered wagon, just driving out in the wilderness and saying, I'm going to do a whole different direction in digital printing. And we're so happy to have you as an important client and I think a partner with Mimaki.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jon.
Yeah.